Students at River Valley High School leaving flowers as a mark of respect for the boy who was allegedly killed on campus. It's the last hurrah for diners today before Singapore goes back to Phase 2 heightened alert from tomorrow. And the Istana open house has been postponed again, leaving visitors disappointed. Hello, I'm Olivia Quay. You're watching The Big Story live in the Straits Times newsroom. You can subscribe to our channel so you never miss a single episode. Following the Hari Raya Haji public holiday, River Valley High School students are back on campus 2 days after the alleged killing of a 13-year-old boy. As early as 6:30 a.m. this morning, over a dozen school staff and security officers were at the gates to usher in students, some turning up with flowers to pay their respects to their schoolmate. More bouquets were seen outside the school. I can only imagine it's a difficult day for the student body at River Valley High School. Joining me now is founder of the Brahm Centre, Angie Chew. The Brahm Centre offers science-based mindfulness programs for seniors, adults and teenagers. Welcome back to the show, Angie. What's your advice to the students and staff who have to come to terms with, what happened on Monday?
Well, the faster that their mind can accept what has happened and focus on what is going to be the way forward to help prevent such a recurrence would be very helpful. And for them to have an open conversation together with parents, teachers, and the students themselves in order to put it out there, like, how do they feel about what has happened? And what are some of the assumptions and even speculation that's come up in their minds to process and to resolve what they are feeling and the trauma that they have experienced. So we're not talking about speculation, in terms of just having a good gossip, but rather to address the speculation that's going on in the mind, because that's really natural what the mind is going to do.
Right. And what are the other learning points from the River Valley case when it comes to the long-term mental well-being of students?
I think there is a very low level of understanding right now of what mental illness is all about. So if someone who has attempted suicide before, there are a lot of underlying issues that have brought about somebody to that point. For example, we've had recently two young people who had approaches for help, as we have a helpline, and they were very close to taking their own lives. And we had to activate the police to intervene. And their parents had no idea that their children were close to ending their lives. But when the police came knocking at the door, it helped them to realize that the situation is very serious. So looking out for signs is going to be helpful for us to do early intervention to help our children who may be feeling that life is not worth living, life is too painful, or just that life is too grim. The future doesn't look in any way, in form or shape to be optimistic.
And so for parents and friends, what are the warning signs to look out for? And of course, the best ways to help teenagers?
When you start to see that your child is looking to be very reclusive or very easily irritable, and they tend to overreact and get into a rage, these are signs that they are not well. And it is really important for us to reach out to them. And if we can't, to get a relative or a friend to find out what is actually going on and to get them the help that they need. And sometimes parents ourselves need the help because we may not be familiar with these distressful situations. And please reach out.
Right. Well, Angie, thank you so much for your time on the show. That was Angie Chew, founder of the Brahm Centre. Meanwhile, President Halimah Yacob wrote on Facebook today that it's hard to make sense of what happened at River Valley High School and even harder to fathom the unimaginable trauma and grief experienced. She said that some are shocked and scared while others feel helpless and confused, adding that if you're one of them, you're not alone and it's not a sign of weakness to seek help or a listening ear. Likewise, in a Facebook post today marking Racial Harmony Day, Education Minister Chan Chun Sing said religious groups have come forward to pray with the bereaved and for the well-being of the school's students. He wrote, quote, "These heartfelt gestures of solidarity transcending race and religion have brought light in our nation's hour of darkness. They embody the inherent understanding that before all else, we are fellow Singaporeans." An update on the COVID-19 situation here. 179 new locally transmitted cases confirmed today. 130 are linked to the Jurong Fishery Port Cluster, which now has 451 cases. 8 of today's cases belong to the KTV cluster, and that's grown to 215. 2 imported cases were also reported today, with both developing the illness during SHN or isolation. Further updates will be shared later tonight. Infectious diseases specialist Dr Leong Hoe Nam from the Rophi Clinic is here with me now. Welcome back to the show, Doc. So as we enter a 4-week period of tighter restrictions tomorrow, what are the markers to look out for before we can emerge from phase 2 heightened alert? Is it to bring down local cases to single digits?
You see, if we actually identify individuals that already have been known and they've been quarantined, that's fine. Actually, the numbers to me are not important. What I really want to see are the number of unlinked cases. Unlinked cases that comes down then tells us that we are actually catching all the anticipated cases. Now we still have about 30 unlinked cases, and that's quite worrying because you wouldn't have quarantined them, and in turn each of them can transmit to another 2 or 3. So potentially from this 30 you can have already another 60 to 90 cases. So I am still worried.
Another worrying point, Doc, is that, the number of seniors who remain unvaccinated. Among today's local cases, MOH reported that 4 are seniors above 70 years old who are unvaccinated and at risk of serious illness. Singapore's reopening plans largely hinges on getting our seniors vaccinated. Health Minister Ong Ye Kung saying yesterday around 200,000 seniors 60 years old and above are still unvaccinated. Have a listen.
But there remains over 100,000 unvaccinated seniors over 70 years old. And if you add those that's above 60 years old, that's another 100,000 or so. There's altogether 200,000 above 60 years old. And they have a high likelihood of falling critically ill once infected. Almost every one of them, if infected, will end up in hospital because they are high risk. And 10 to 15% of them, based on our experience, will end up in ICU. So imagine 200,000 people. If we have widespread infection, just 10% of them, let's say 10% of them get infected, that's 20,000. All 20,000 will be in hospital. Amongst them, 10 to 15%, that's 2 to 3,000, will end up in ICU. It's huge, huge number.
Well, Dr. Leong, back to you. Convincing reluctant seniors to get their COVID-19 jabs is a long-standing issue, a long-standing problem. What isn't getting through to this group, and what do you have to say to them?
Ollie, thank you very much for this pertinent question. It really tells me that the big story is really concerned about the elderly, and my story to them is this: you need to get yourself vaccinated. The data is very, very clear. If you've been vaccinated, hardly anyone needs oxygen. In fact, it becomes a common cold. What if COVID-19 becomes a common cold? Life goes on as normal without any mask at all. Now, I have Dr. Carol Tan, who has been knocking on the doors of various groups and trying to find out why these elderly are not vaccinated. The answer is because they were told they are not suitable because of an allergy. Well, that's completely wrong. That was in the past. In the past, we were worried that the allergy may be triggered and in turn cause more problems. The message out there is, even if you have an allergy, you can go for vaccination. Even if you have a stroke, a heart attack, any past medical illnesses, practically every condition, you can get yourself vaccinated. In fact, when you get yourself vaccinated, If you're an elderly, you would protect yourself from falling badly ill, and in turn, you would actually save time for your family and your family members, because they wouldn't have to go into the shelter, into the hospital, and look after you. Now, I'm going to give a challenge out here to all the TBS, the Big Story fans here. You enjoy the stories, and you are getting updated every day. But the trouble is, many of the elderly are not getting the story. I would like you to hear this story, hear the need to vaccinate the elderly, and go forth and share this message. Go out there and tell, you need vaccinated. You need to be vaccinated to actually protect yourself and in turn protect the nation. Now, Mr. Ong Ye Kung actually gave a figure of 200,000. That sounds very scary. But if we actually aim for 75% of the population that's vaccinated, 25% will still fall sick, which is 1 million people. That's huge. Can you imagine? Total tally, 1 million people. So you as an individual, if you have been vaccinated, I now ask you to become an advocate for the vaccine. Go out there, find an elderly and say, uncle, auntie, let me take you to the vaccination center. I've done it. You're going to find, and I'm going to get you vaccinated, and I'll take you home thereafter. Find that elderly, save that life, be that lifesaver. Launch TBS into the big story with a big vaccination drive.
Well, let's look to something else, Doc. You know, the task force said we've hit the 50% vaccination target, and hopefully we're still on track to get 2/3 of our population vaccinated by National Day. Only then can we consider transitioning to a new normal. What sort of case numbers are you projecting in this eventuality?
Actually, I'm not too optimistic. At 50% cases, I'm still rather disappointed, because you have only about 67 to 88% protection after you have 2 doses. And I know the ministry has talked about 75%. Well, I'm still not happy with it, because Dr. Leong Hoe Nam's figures here is actually 90%. I want a good 90% of the people vaccinated, and truly then we can actually keep the numbers down. What will be the new normal? I think we will want to talk about everyone still has to wear the mask on, because even if I've been vaccinated, I may still spread on to other people. Number 2, we want to avoid crowds, because cases will still pop up and we don't want to overwhelm the hospitals immediately. And I'm going to take a cue from from UK. UK had Freedom Day, but the virus also had their freedom moments, because we see the number of cases going up immensely. Cases will continue to occur in Singapore, and with a target of about 75%, like I said, at least another 1 million people will get infected in Singapore. Big numbers, which means we have to slow it down, just like what Mr. Ong Ye Kung has said. If you are vaccinated, well, expect a simple common cold. You take the teeth out of the bite of the virus, you won't die, you're going to be just great. In fact, but if you are not vaccinated, I will be worried. There's an 8 to 10% chance you'll be hospitalized. There's a risk of about up to 1% risk of dying. And then effectively, the Ministry of Health feels that mRNA vaccines are the only effective vaccines. So going forwards, I'm still quite bleak about the future. But if we get the numbers up to 80 to 90% vaccination, the sunny Singapore can come back again.
Dr. Leong, thank you so much for coming on the show. We always appreciate your time and insights. I've been speaking with Dr. Leong Hoe Nam, an infectious diseases specialist from the Rophi Clinic at Mount Elizabeth Novena. For many of us, today will be the last normal Wednesday for a while, the last hurrah, if you like, before dining in is suspended at all F&B establishments. Multimedia journalist Renee Poh was out this afternoon speaking to business owners and customers, and she files this report.
Off, on and off again. Dining in at F&B outlets is off the table once more from Thursday, July 22nd, when Singapore returns to Phase 2 heightened alert. Restaurants and cafes can only offer takeaways and delivery up till August 18th. The restrictions come just days after businesses were allowed to sit up to 5 vaccinated persons in a group on Monday, July 19th. It's lunchtime on a weekday in the Arab Street area. As you can see, the restaurants around me are mostly quiet, and the bars nearby at Haji Lane will only open later in the evening. Good Luck Beer House was offering an all-day happy hour promotion, which saw a few patrons, mostly in groups of 2, enjoying a pint of beer. I spoke to a bakery cafe to see how they are coping with the sudden change in restrictions.
First reaction was, it was something that we all expected actually. We thought it should have come slightly earlier. I think the whole industry, if I can say so for my F&B colleagues, is that we are a little bit tired. And then we are not sure how we are going to bounce back so quickly. We saw people rushing in over the weekend and today as well. Yeah, there's more people. We had a rush of cancellations for table reservations. We also have a rush of cancellations for food orders because we do catering as well.
One coffee shop, Kampong Glam Cafe, however, was packed with diners. Many expressed disappointment at the new restrictions, but felt they were necessary.
I came with my sister, my brother-in-law and my nephew today. So we figure out that we feel that today is the last chance that we can dine in together and we can hang out before the restrictions start tomorrow.
That situation with the numbers going particularly high, like a couple of hundred and so on, that has also happened really quickly, hasn't it? So I guess you have to respond to that. I just think if the vaccination percentages were higher, then perhaps it wouldn't be necessary to do this now.
I'm more worried about the hawkers or the businesses actually, the waiters, the cleaners, because most of them, they earn by the hour, and with no dining in, it will affect businesses and their livelihoods. So even if I don't get to dine in for 4 weeks, I'm fine with that. Yeah. But I'm more concerned about the businesses and all these people who are really struggling to make ends meet.
Ms. Imelda is already anticipating a drop in business at her cafe over the next 4 weeks.
Business will drop at least 60-70%. And on top of that, business had already dropped the first time round during the phase 2 heightened alert phase. So it's very concerning, and we are looking forward to some respite. For example, rental rebates or manpower salary rebates, that would be really helpful.
It seems to be an overall mixed day for F&B businesses as Singapore reverts to phase 2 heightened alert to curb the worsening COVID-19 situation. This is Renee Poh for The Straits Times.
In other headlines, the Istana Open House slated for August the 1st has been postponed amid tighter restrictions. At the last open house back on January 26 last year, more than 12,000 visitors turned up, but since February 2020, the grounds have been closed to the public. Overseas, 12 people have died and 100,000 were forced to relocate as flash floods devastate China's Henan province. It's been hit by storms since the weekend and are expected to last until tonight. Pictures and videos on social media showing the magnitude of the disaster, with millions affected by the roads and subway stations submerged in water. 2 days to the opening ceremony for the Tokyo Olympics, but the first event kicked off this morning, a Japan win over Australia in softball. Meanwhile, the head of the World Health Organization has backed the Games, saying it should proceed to demonstrate to the world what can be achieved with the right plan and measures. My colleagues at the sports desk have landed in Tokyo and will be catching up with them throughout the Olympics on the progress of our Team Singapore athletes. And although the pandemic has grounded flights, according to airlineratings.com, Qatar Airways is the world's best airline for 2021, knocking Air New Zealand from the top spot for its agility during the pandemic, like keeping its route network largely open, offering repatriation flights and ensuring a safe flying experience. Singapore Airlines is in the top 3. It was also named Best First Class Airline. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Thanks so much for watching and see you tomorrow.